It's time for The Full Story with your host, Matthew Bishop. Matt's back on the WYAB airwaves. And now, the host of The Full Story, Matthew Bishop.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9 as we get to you again on this Saturday. Hope everybody's already enjoying their Saturday. Looks like it's going to be yet just another hot one. It is August in Mississippi, so, you chose it. But here we are back here. We have a great show for you guys planned today. Today we're going to have a special guest with us. Her name is Rachel Kerr Schneider. She is the author of The Widow Chose Red. It's a question mark. I had to make sure I say it the right way. And we're going to have a great discussion with her today about exactly what her life has been like, especially as going through her husband who had ALS, and kind of the process of how to cope with that and how to live with that, and look at it from a God-focused perspective. Because I know, as many of you know, I was a prosecutor for many years, and I specialized in homicide cases, and I worked a lot with families who immediately lost loved ones, and that kind of blaming God sometimes that happens when that happens, these horrible tragedies. So I think she's going to be able to offer us some really great insight on that. I'm very excited for it. After we get with her, if we have time after we finish with her, I want to make sure we take enough time with her. But if we have a little bit of time afterwards, I want to start talking about Donald Trump utilizing the military as border patrol, essentially, or as utilizing border security, or to go against the cartels as he's trying to do. We're going to talk about the legality of that, exactly what he is wanting to do, and as a lot of people are talking about, it's why do we have the border patrol if we have the military? Or how does that go into play? I'm going to talk about my experience in that regard, as I used to advise a command that had that we actually went down to the border for a border mission. So intricately, I know the laws involved with that. So it's going to be I really want to take some time to talk about it. Otherwise, like I said, I don't know if we'll have too much time after that. Of course, at the end, we will have our this day in history. Really great one's going to come up to you for that at the end of the show. As always, you can follow us on regulatorsproductions.com. That's our website. You can find us all the information you want about the show, as well as our live streaming. We're, of course, live streaming on both YouTube and Rumble. You can just search The Full Story on Rumble, and you should be able to find it, or you can go to our website, and you have the links there. Same thing with YouTube. Sometimes a little bit harder with YouTube. We usually have much more people watch us on Rumble. So it's much easier to find us on there. So if you want to see my pretty radio face, you can see it right there on the live stream, as well as seeing Rachel, who is much prettier than I am. So you at least have that. At least it'll balance out the face that you will see on that end of it, if you want to catch the live stream. As always, if you want to call in during any of the breaks, you have a question for me, if you have a question for Rachel, you can always call in at 601-879-0002. There's also comment functions on there. As I tell people, on the I always love talking to you guys when it's during the breaks, because we get to have a little bit more open conversations than we can over the airwaves. We're not FCC regulated when you call in on the phone line, so we have some really good frank discussions. Or if it's just something you want me to look at, as you know, our whole purpose here is to deep dive into stories, as is the name, The Full Story. So if there's something you want us to research, we're always open to research it for you. But again, it's more than just radio news, or news that's going on. The reason I call it The Full Story, the reason we have this Saturday show, where the whole purpose of it is to dive into things that not always are politics, right? Which is why I'm really glad to have Rachel here with us, and to get her story, to get that full story, which I think is a story that'll resonate with a lot of people out there. She's actually a Jackson native. She's going to talk to us about that as well. So it's going to be a great show. But we're going to go ahead and take our first break right here, because I want to make sure we have as maximum amount of time as possible with Rachel, and we'll bring her in right after the break. Again, if you want to call in during this break, 601-879-0002. But keep it tuned here to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9.
Matthew?
Can you hear me, Rachel? We're still good?
Yes. Did you
Okay,
say that number 601-879-0002?
that's correct. Yes, ma'am.
I'm putting it on my Facebook.
There you go. Uh, and they can also comment on the live stream as well. Uh,
Okay.
but we get a lot of usually a lot of callers during the during the break. So
Great.
uh, sometimes very interesting things.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Uh, as I tell people about radio, it's it's about 10% informing, 90% entertainment with calling people. Uh,
And how long have you been doing this?
I started in broadcast journalism and radio in 2000. See, it would have been 2015, I think,
Okay.
around yeah. And then I took a little bit of break when I was in the I joined the army for a few years,
Okay.
where I was a prosecutor. So I did that. I did that for a while, which is one of the things I want to talk about because I did work a lot with families who had immediate loss when it came, and I
Mm,
worked hand in hand with families, and that's one of the things I definitely want to talk about because you talk about here God's plan, and that's something that's very, very hard for a lot of families to grasp.
sure.
Um, especially when they lose a loved one, so suddenly like they do in a homicide.
Hmm.
Their family's there, they talk to them one day, and then they're just
They're
gone.
gone.
So that's something I always saw families struggle with.
Hmm.
Um, and you talk about that in your book, so I want to make sure we cover that because I think it's something that I think you can help out. I think there's a lot of things with you that I want to cover that work with a lot of military families, especially as you traveling. Your early career and supporting your husband in that regard, but still, talking about the depression that you had and everything. And
Sure.
I think it's. Sorry, I'm just checking the schedule here.
Yep.
Sorry, I have to interrupt every once to make sure we're on the commercials. So I don't talk over, so we don't do that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff in there that I think when I was reading it, military spouses could really, really benefit.
Yeah,
Um,
and so I was born on the base in Pensacola, Florida. My dad was a graduate in the second class of the Air Force Academy, and he went and flew for the Marine Corps.
oh,
He
really?
flew choppers for the Marine Corps because at that time the academy was so new, they could make a choice which branch of the military they wanted to go into. So I have my brother that was born at Fort Lee.
Hmm.
So that was all part of my early upbringing. But of course, my
Oh, okay.
dad being the military man, um, we grew up with that kind of sometimes that
Yeah,
kind of environment, right? Just get it
right.
done. Don't argue and do
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah. My dad was a Marine as well. I mean,
There you go.
he was
Is it
yeah,
Semper Fi, right? Yes.
yeah, Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
That's right.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna have to stop here because we're on the last commercial, so we don't talk over it.
Got it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9. As I'm now joined here by I can't ever get it right by Rachel Kerr Schneider, the author of the book "The Widow Chose Red." And am I saying that right? I'm gonna make sure I emphasize the question mark because I think it is a great question. But Rachel, thank you for joining us here this morning. And,
Matthew, thank you. And hello to you and Mississippi. I was there just a couple of weeks ago, and it's as hot here in Dallas, Texas as it is in Mississippi.
yeah, it's a different kind of hot though, right? Because it's like here it's just so humid, and over there it's like 110 degrees there, but here it's just like that 100% humidity, as you know, growing up here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you look lovely, by the way, as well.
Oh,
And thank you for joining us here on the live stream, including here on the radio. So, like I said, you are actually from Jackson or grew up in Jackson, Mississippi.
I did. I did actually. I mean, I was born in Pensacola, but my family had a business there, Yazoo Lawnmowers, and so my dad came back to run the business, and that's where I grew up. I graduated from Callaway High School. Go Chargers!
Okay, that's what I was about to ask you.
Um,
What high school did you go to?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
I was just about to ask you what high school you went to.
What
So
high school? Yeah, Callaway High School. It's still there. I was part of the Gay First program. The Gay for Girls had a modeling board there. I was very involved with that. I went to Broadmoor Baptist Church. I also went to Christ Lutheran Church. I grew up there. I still have family there. Actually, I just had an uncle who's just been recently diagnosed with ALS, and so I had a minute to visit with him while I was in Jackson just a few weeks ago. I was there for a funeral of a very close friend. So I Jackson to me is just it will always be home, and I have very, very good memories of growing up there. And they say you can never go home again.
that's right.
It changes. It does
Yeah.
change, but
Sure.
the memories are always there. My dad's business was sold. He's in Australia now. My mom and
Yeah.
dad are in
Oh,
Australia.
they're still in Australia. I saw that in the book. They're still in
Yeah.
Australia.
Yes, they are, and still doing outdoor power equipment. So
Really?
it still stays. It's still part of the family. It's in the family DNA, that kind of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so let's get into the book. So like again, the widow chose red. My journey with Jesus, John, and ALS.
Mhm.
So I just want to talk. Like I said it's sort of like the book itself. It's sort of a memoir, but
Mhm.
also what I really like about it has these little reflections at the end of each section or each chapter, I guess. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a memoir with the addition of some self help or to how to improve people or give them advice about this. So it's kind of a best of both worlds there. Was that kind of your intention?
Yes, very much so. Because as you mentioned in the intro, this is very much a faith journey.
Mhm.
And I know that all of us are thrown things in our life that are unexpected and unimaginable circumstances. And even when we grow up with faith and we know who Jesus is and we've gone to church, we will find ourselves kind of going, what's going on here? What am I supposed to
Mhm.
learn here? Why is this so hard? And so I wanted to also provide some of the things that I was thinking about as I was going through this journey, and also give maybe some tangible, actionable items that could help if you find yourself going through a difficult season in your life.
Yeah, and when you were going through this, and we'll get into more detail about it in just a second, but were there books that you had? I mean, obviously the Bible, but was there other books that you kind of relied on during that time?
Well, I will tell you, my youngest, Jake, I was actually doing a book report on Heaven is for Real. And
Okay.
so, the concept of heaven and, how all of that plays into, and when you're young like that, my boys were so young. They were 10 and 14 when their dad actually died. So they were actually younger when he got diagnosed. So books for me, I can't say that I had a lot of time to read while I
Oh, I
was
can
taking
imagine.
care
Yeah,
of John. But
yeah.
what I did do a lot of was I listened to a lot of things
Mhm.
on my phone, a lot of sermons, a lot of scripture, and so those were things that I used to fortify the messaging that I needed to get me through.
Yeah, and I will say it was such a great forward by Patty Albury. Of the I think she wrote Chicken Soup for the Christian Soul. Great author. I mean, such wonderful words that she wrote for you. How did you meet her? How did you guys just knew each other in the circles, or?
Well, actually, it's a great story. So Patty works with Jack Canfield. They co-created the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and I actually was invited to attend a retreat where
Mhm.
Jack was speaking and training, and That's where I met Patty, and that was over. I think it was right after John died that I went to this retreat, because at that time I really wanted to write the book. I really wanted to build a platform. I really wanted to minister to women. And so I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to go. And what I found, though, Matthew, is that God had another plan, because it's been 14 years.
Mhm.
And I finally have gotten the book out. The second book will detail what it was like to raise my boys. And that's kind
Yeah,
of what happened to me
really.
in the gap, was that I had to say, wait a
Mm.
second, these boys need a full-time parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to talk a little bit because, like I said, it's a great. One thing about memoirs is that you kind of always know the ending, right? It's before you even get to it, right? So it's like, ah, man, it's like you know the ending when it's like right there in the beginning. But it's such interesting stories, and one of the things. So I used, as many of the listeners know, I used to be an automotive journalist. So I wrote and reviewed cars, and so someone's car history is very interesting to me. And hearing about your first your MG midget, I think that you had here in Mississippi, which resonates with me because I have a little Miata. I've had multiple Miatas, so
Okay.
I really love them. But and then I think your T-top Cutlass.
Yes.
When you and John were moving from Dallas to Pennsylvania,
Yes.
that car. I mean, I guess it was kind of comfortable going cross country in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing for me, right, was that it was supposed to be Miss Alabama's car and she didn't want it. So
Yeah,
I
that's
was
right.
like, wow, I'm a frustrated wannabe beauty queen, but I'll take her car, So and yeah, the MG was hilarious because I think I write in the book about how my youngest brother Sean ran in the
Mhm.
car going, "There's a midget outside, there's a midget outside." And I'm like,
I know.
you can't say that. You can't talk like
You're
that. And
little
then
people. You can't say that.
yeah, you can't do that. And I didn't know, and I still don't know to this day much about cars, Matthew. So I think
Yeah.
it's hilarious that that would be one of the things that you would key in on
Yeah. Yeah.
because yeah,
Well, people's car history is it kind of tells people almost relate their lives to the cars they had in that circumstance,
right.
right? Whether you're a car person or not, it's like, I mean, during that time of my life, I had this crappy car, or I had this car, and how you weave it in, how John, bought you that brand new Honda Accord,
Yeah.
um, right after you get to Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah. He was so done with the Cutlass. And that car's not built for ice or snow
No,
or
no.
any of that stuff. No.
You'd be sliding around.
Yes.
Um, well, like I said in the beginning, like you said, it's really interesting because I mean, you talk about moving around with your husband and with his corporate career, moving up in different companies, and one thing as a lot of people know, I was in the Army for several years, and we worked a lot with with families. Families in the military are always
Mhm.
moving. It's hard for spouses to be able to. They have to move almost every 2 years. Sometimes
Mhm.
you get a third year, but sometimes it's every 2 years. And I think it's really good in your memoir about how you're every time you go to a new place, and it was crazy amount of different places. You're going from California to Minnesota to Pennsylvania to back to Texas, several times back to Texas.
Yes.
How you talked about how you had some depression at of some of that, and that we're still and how you're still able to look for that light and still try to find the job. What kind of motivated you during all those kind of different moves?
Well, it's easy to do when you have kids because your
Yeah,
kids force you to get involved with school and
yeah,
sports and those things. But John and I didn't have kids for 10 years, and we did a lot of relocation in that time. And so it really gave me one of the things I did is I pursued some of my interests. He tried to get me to like golf. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. But he tried
yeah.
to get me to like golf. We bought bikes and did the whole, biking thing.
Mhm.
I didn't stick with that either. I went to cooking classes and did those kinds of things. So I really had to try and find those things that were going to bring me joy. And people know too, even just the simple things, finding somebody to do your hair, finding the right grocery store, right? Because we have certain ways that we like to shop, and finding a church.
Mhm.
And those things you have to be intentional about. And sometimes you really don't want to. And then of course, making friends. And what we know is if we're going to have a relationship with anyone, it can take time.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we just don't like, right? We live in an instant gratification world where, okay, we should be able to decide in a snap, okay,
Mhm.
they're going to be our friend or blah, 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 blah. And I will tell you, coming from the family that I came from, depression was not something that you readily acknowledged. We,
Mhm.
we don't talk about it. My dad, like you, was in the military.
Mhm.
Who has time to be depressed? You
Yeah,
got stuff to do, right?
right.
And then get treated for it. Go see a therapist. No, you should be able to fix that yourself. So I will tell you that, very early on, I made a decision that I needed some additional help. And my husband, he was watching me, and he didn't know how to help me. I mean, me looking for a job or trying to, but so I started seeking out some counseling very early on, and realized that if I was going to assimilate into a new community, I was going to have to put myself out there,
Absolutely.
and sometimes and I was going to have to put myself out there maybe more than once,
Yes, ma'am.
believe it or not.
Absolutely. Looks like we got a caller coming in here. They may have a question for you, Rachel. If you don't
Okay,
mind taking a call.
sure.
All right, you're on the full story. Can you hear me? Well, they're on the phone. This is the thing about live radio, folks. You're gonna call in. You're there. Hello. Going once. Going twice. And that's it. All
And
right.
they're
Well, that
gone.
was great. And they're gone. Well, they had the idea. Um,
Yes, they may try again. Who
that's
knows?
right. That's right. But so what, like I said, what advice would you give to, like I said, especially a lot of women who are having to move around, and I think especially in today's world where it seems like, it's almost looked down upon for someone to follow their spouse's careers. Like, what are you doing? And I think it was really good. You talk about how it's a gift that you're giving, which I
Mhm.
think was a great way. But what advice would you give a lot of these young women that would be in the same circumstance you, who are trying to make their way or trying to follow their husbands in their careers around the country?
I would say, social media is very different now than it was when I was going through all this. You can basically find a group in your neighborhood or in your city, a mom's group, or single gals, or whatever it might be, to connect. That's a first step. I would also say too that, yeah, church is usually the first place that I would gravitate to, finding that place with like-minded people, and knowing too that there are always social things that are going on there. It's not easy. And of course, the kids, as I mentioned earlier, that's always an easy way. But I will tell you, even when I relocated with Jake to Texas
Mhm.
10 years ago, um, sometimes the community has already established, these people have grown up with each other, their kids and everything else. It can be difficult, but don't give up, persevere. You will find, and here's the thing, you never know where it might be that you're going to meet that one person
Yeah.
that you're going to really connect with, and really be able to build. Um and you just kind of have to treat it like it's a scavenger hunt, right? Well, who
Yeah.
am I going to meet today? Where am I going to meet them? Is it the
Yeah.
grocery store, or where might it be?
Yeah, and like I said, you talk about that in your book about all the different places and the friends that you would make, and sometimes in unlucky circumstances. I know you talked a lot about Paula, who ended up becoming a really good family friend, but all these people that you just sometimes meet in the most interesting of places, and you talk about in your book, and so it's a really good. Like I said, that's a part of the book, even in the beginning, actually, I find very interesting. Those little types of stories are how you can kind of take a piece from it. But one thing I wanted to ask you, like I said, I was reading it, and the arranged marriage in the at the very beginning with John's mom,
Yeah.
Elaine, which I love visual images and seeing this little lady in the big sky rides behind a big desk, and she's all of 100 pounds,
Yes. Yes.
and when I saw
Exactly.
when I saw her pictures, exactly how I imagined how you described it in the book. Um, but you talk, I think, a little bit about your first meeting with John, and how he shows up hours and hours late, and then he's like, with sunglasses on at school. So what was it though, about John? They says, this is gonna be the guy.
Matthew, he had the guts to ask me out after that disastrous first meeting. And I had to hand it to him. I mean, and seriously, I was in a place where I wasn't interested in meeting anybody. I
Yeah.
had done this as a favor to Elaine. I would go and meet her son. It was going to help me close the deal on this advertising thing. And so I wasn't looking. And so when he called and said, "Can I take you out?" I was like, "Seriously?" And I will tell you, that first date didn't even go. After the initial meeting and we had this first date, he spills the beer on the table, and I could care less, but I'm like, okay, I don't think, but he did not give up. And so, to his credit, I just, there was something about the fact that he just did not give up. And so I was really taken by that. And of course I loved his mother, and I was like, okay. And I was just really, he was so focused on, success and this career that he was building. And yet he was really able to kind of say, okay, this person, you, Rachel, I really enjoy having you
Yeah.
alongside me, and I want you to take this adventure. And I got to tell you, when he said King of Prussia, I was like, Prussia rhymes with Russia.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
You're talking
I
Europe?
had
What is going on?
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't study that in geography. I had no idea. And so going to Philadelphia, this Mississippi girl headed to Philadelphia, you might as well taken me to a different country. Seriously.
I can imagine. Yeah, then I loved how you talked about, going back then, the hairspray hair and and the heavy makeup, and it's like, growing up in the South. I just know that, I know those women, and I can just imagine walking down the streets of Philadelphia in the in the Southern getup.
Yes, exactly. And then having the bird poop on my head
Oh yes,
with all of that hairspray. Oh, it was
impossible.
oh.
All right, Rachel, we're going to go ahead and take our next break right here. When we get back, what I wanted to talk about, Rachel, when we get back is, after your marriage with him. And I want to talk a little bit about Ronald, which, is some really, really great stuff in there. Because one part of the book is, as we get to, Ronald and what happened with him is, Elaine, I'm always curious, like Elaine, her perspective on a lot of these things, especially as her sons were going through what they did. So that's what we'll talk about. We'll get into that, and we'll get into the ALS diagnosis. Brief to tell people briefly about LS when we get back, but also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. So we'll get right into that when we get back. We have one caller on hold right now. Again, if you want to call in, number 601-879-0002. Caller, I'll get to you in on the break. But just keep it tuned here to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9. Sasha, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just got you on the board now. Like I said, just stay on hold for us, and we'll get you on with Rachel right after the break. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any idea what Sasha wants to talk about?
A winning insurance strategy doesn't rely on one person. Good hustle. Communicate with your guys and make sure everyone's in the right coverage. that knows its roles well, working together to provide an exceptional experience.
Set the screen. You have to protect yourself. 1, 2, 3, Wildcat!
At Shelter Insurance, you can count on our local agents and award-winning customer service to help you protect what matters most.
Come see me, Jamie Creel, at Shelter Insurance and see why Forbes has rated us #1 in the world.
Looking to elevate your ride? Weston Automotive and Rick's Pro Truck have you covered. From rugged bumpers to sleek step bars, Weston's top-notch accessories will transform your truck into a head-turner. And at Rick's Pro Truck, we specialize in custom installations that bring your vision to life. Visit us today for expert advice and unbeatable deals. Weston Automotive and Rick's Pro Truck, where your truck's potential comes alive. Weston and RPT. Trucks live here.
This is Jack Hoffman. For nearly 31 years, Tico's Steakhouse has been a staple of fine dining in Jackson, Mississippi. Dad has long since desired for me to come work alongside him. And now that I'm here, I would like to invite you to come experience our family tradition of our hospitality, sizzling steaks, and healthy poured beverages. Our dining rooms are open and we are taking reservations. Our private rooms are also available along with takeout. Call today or stop in and experience Tico's in the second generation.
Tico's Steakhouse, East County Line Road in Ridgeland, 601-956-1030.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the Full Story in WYAB 103.9. Sorry again for the bagpipes. I don't know why they keep putting the bagpipes in there. The worst instrument that was ever created. It makes your ears bleed. But now you're at least very much awake after the ear piercing sound of the bagpipes. But we have a much we have a much nicer voice coming up here. We have Sasha who is calling in. Sasha, you're on the line.
Oh, hi. Thank you. Rachel, I want to ask you, first of all, I loved your book. I thought it was amazing. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It was great. But I did want to ask you, at what point did you realize that you wanted to write a book?
Oh, well, Sasha, that's a great question. I knew that I wanted to tell this story. I knew while I was living it that I wanted to share it. But I think the actual process, like I said earlier, it took me a long time to get to the place where I actually could sit down and concentrate on it. But I kept journals, I kept calendars, I could go back and look at what was happening in my life. I think now if there's anyone who wants to write a story and share it, there's technology that makes it so much easier. And what I do know is that all of us have probably been told, you should write a book. Your life is so fascinating. So I'm here to encourage you to do it because it's much easier with technology. Get somebody who, will support you and get your story out there because it will affect and hopefully inspire somebody else in whatever they're going through.
Wow, thank you. I'm inspired.
Thank you, Sasha. I'll be waiting to see your book on the bookshelves.
All right, thanks, Sasha.
Thank you.
All right, Rachel. Like I said, I want to now get into some of the the meat and potatoes, as some would say, of the book, and that is so you and John, like you said, you had 2 children. You had J3, John the Third, and Jake, and you guys had a boat called the 3 J's, which I think is just remarkable. Because you guys lived in Minnesota, and that's like the place of lakes, right? In Minnesota, like the place of lakes.
Everywhere you go, there's a lake. And here's what I thought, Matthew. I thought, in the wintertime, nobody will go to the lake. Oh, no. You're on the lake, whether it's frozen or unfrozen. They set up camps out there. People drive on it. Coming from Mississippi, the Ross Barnett Reservoir was all I ever knew. And no, that thing never froze over.
No.
So seeing that, yes, it was all about the lake. And my husband did grow up. His family was into boating. They spent time in Florida and in Maryland, and he knew all about that. So it was a whole new thing for me when he said, Rachel, I'm going to go get a boat, and I'm like, he goes, come with me. I'm like, John, I know nothing about boats, rowboat, towboat, showboat. I know nothing. I said, just get an air conditioner and a bathroom. That would be great.
And he found it, which was remarkable.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
got the 2 things that you wanted. He made sure that to get. Um, but I also like how you talk. Because everybody you talked about people who get a boat, they say you only buy a boat once because of all the stuff you have to do with it. And I thought it was funny that you mentioned it. But John and the boys seem to love the boat.
They did. It was a great place. They did a lot of bonding. He taught J3 how to dock that thing.
Mm.
And I mean, at a very young age, J3 was able to do that. But boating is a lifestyle, and usually you grow up in it, right? You know how to do it. But it is a lot of, because it's like as soon as you pull out, somebody's like, okay, I'm hungry. What do we have to eat? Or what do we have to drink? And I'm like, we just got here. But it was, I wanted to name the boat Where's Mom? Because, where is she?
Where is Mom?
But it was a wonderful experience. And my boys still love the water.
Yeah.
And Lake Minnetonka is a beautiful place to have a boat. Yes.
Yeah. And that's part of, I think, John, you said, during this, you guys were having his boys, he was always roughhousing with him. He's a very athletic guy. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. He played sports in college. He baseball and football and in high school as well. So that's why when he got this little nagging thing with his foot, he didn't think a whole lot about it until it wasn't resolving itself.
Yeah. And was he trying to hide any of those initial symptoms from you, or was he openly sharing them too? Because I know for a lot of men, it's really tough to show any kind of, especially to your wife or your boys, especially, any of those kind of weaknesses. Was he openly sharing that with you, or was it something that you noticed and asked him about?
No, I had no idea. And here's the thing. So he was seeing a neurologist for a year, and I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing with ALS too, Matthew, is that it can take 1 to 3 years to figure out what's going on.
Really?
There are a lot of people who have it and don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And because it mimics so many other things like MS, or it could just be, something just happening sporadically. And so John had a physical scheduled at the Mayo, which everybody knows Mayo is the mothership of anything medical, based there in Rochester. We were fortunate enough to only be a couple of hours away.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor handed him this file folder and said, I think you should take this with you when you go to Mayo. And so when he called me and said, I'm coming back home from Mayo, they want you to come with me the next day, I was like, what are you talking about? We had this all lined up. I don't need to go, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then he came home that night, and the kids were already in bed, and I was reading, and he was as white as a ghost. And he said, I have this disease. They think I'm going to die. And I'm like, wait a second. And he said, they think I have ALS.
Mm-hmm.
I have ALS. I'm like, what is that? I've never heard of that. And he's like, no, they think I have Lou Gehrig's. And I'm like, well, what is that? I don't know what I don't know what that is either. I'm not a sport,
Yeah.
So I will tell you, and that's not unusual either, Matthew, because ALS is still a fairly rare disease. There are only about 30,000 people currently living with it in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Between 5,000 and 6,000 people are diagnosed every year. And they still give you 2 to 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and they still don't know what causes it, and there's still no known cure.
Yeah. And essentially, for ALS, I'm not a medical person, but for a lot of our listeners who may not be medical people as well, it has something to do with like the nerves, or your muscles are weakened, or signals aren't going to your nerves.
Yes. So it stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And so actually what happens, you have motor neurons that travel from your brain to your muscles, right? Telling your muscles to move, and they start to die. So what happens is your body starts to self-paralyze. So just imagine you have an itch on your nose. You can't lift your hand to scratch it. You're laying in bed. You can't turn over. And yet your mind stays completely intact. You know exactly what's going on. And so ultimately, Matthew, what happens is, because the diaphragm is the muscle that moves our lungs, it quits working. I mean, people get on breathing machines. You can get a feeding tube because it becomes difficult to swallow. Then you get some people get a breathing tube. It's a smaller percentage. And that's ultimately what happens is that you can't breathe anymore.
Yeah. And the scary thing is, I guess the doctors are telling you. I mean, you know this when you're diagnosed. So it's like,
Mhm.
it's just, most people don't know how they're going to die. And then you see this, and he's like, that I'm probably going to suffocate to death. And so when you learn this, I mean, at that point, do you blame God, or do you dive deeper into it? What was your, as far as your faith goes? How did that shake your faith at all when you get this? Is that your husband, this young, very young, virile guy,
Yes.
gets this? Does that make you challenge your faith at all?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you're in shock for probably months. I will say months. You're in shock, and you're just, and then you overwhelm yourself with information, right? You go to the internet, you Google, you go to the ALS Association, like, what can I do? What can I do? They're like, yeah, nothing, but we're
Mhm.
going to try and work with you and make your quality of life as good as we possibly can. I will tell you that, yes, I had a lot of biblical knowledge. I grew up, I knew all the stories of the Bible, I knew all the people in the Bible. Okay, great. But at this point, I went from this religious thing to this relationship with Jesus. And I mean, when you are at the end of your rope and have nowhere else to go, you just get on your knees and say, okay. And for the longest time, my prayer was, Lord, I don't know how to do this. I
Mhm.
do not know how to do that. I've never helped anybody die. I've never had anybody, Ronald, who we'll talk about in a little bit,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was like, so I will say that my faith got to a place where it didn't mean I wasn't scared. It didn't mean this was easy. It didn't mean that I liked the answers I was getting. But what it did mean is that I was constantly calling on Jesus to say, help me through this, show me how to do this. And like I said earlier, listening to those messages from the Bible, scriptures versus people, pastors who were I just have to fortify myself because I don't know what this is. I know how the story's going to end, but
Mhm.
I don't know what the journey's going to look
What that,
like.
what that process is going to look like.
Mhm.
And, so we talked about, we mentioned Ronald there. So in your book, you talk about Ronald, who's John's brother, his
Yes.
younger brother, same age as you, I'm guessing. Ronald's
Yes.
same age as you. Yeah.
Yes.
He went to
Yes.
SMU. Um,
Yes.
and he, of course, was diagnosed and eventually died by another terminal illness, AIDS.
Yes.
And so their mother, this is one thing that just kept running through my mind, was Elaine, because you talk about her so much, and again, she's this character that I, that I have in my head. To have two sons, and she had two sons and a daughter, if I'm correct, right? That was
Yes.
all of them. Um, you know, what was it? I mean, for her, as a mother, to have your two sons both die very young. I think Ronald was 30, like 39 or something.
Yes. You're
Uh,
right. Yes,
um,
Matthew.
and John was in his 40s, or just turned
Yes.
50. Just
Just
turned
turned 50. Yes.
50. For her, I mean, did you have those conversations with her, about, because I know she was a big part of your life, but she's over out in California, and you're in Minnesota, obviously. I mean, do you know what it was like for her? Did you guys ever have those discussions about her sons, going through these things?
Well, I think what I've found is for that generation, right? They didn't spend a lot of time talking about things. They just reacted and they just did what had to be done, right? I mean, they don't sit with their feelings like this, like
Yeah,
the newer generations do, right? We don't spend a lot of time
that's
going,
all we talk about is their feelings for us millennials.
yeah,
Uh,
right. And so what I did know is that Elaine, uh, going through this with Ronald, and I write about it in the book too, about how it was many years later that I finally was able to talk to her about it was like, because she found him. He died in his sleep and he was at her home and she found him, and I write about that in the book because I'd never really been able to go there with her, but I also found John. He
yeah,
passed at
almost the
home, so
exact same way. Yeah.
yeah, we had that shared experience. And so and she was able to talk to me about it, but because she had held it for they just hold on to these things for
Yeah.
so long. And so, and then even to talk about it, but yet what I will tell you is that yesterday would have been Ronald's 63rd birthday. I call her on his birthday, I call her on his passing day. I talk about Ronald and John and her second husband, Van,
Yeah.
who passed as well. Because, keeping the memory, what I found too is that, yes, initially it may be hard when you're at the initial stages of loss to talk about people because it hurts so much.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are 14 years later for John, even longer for Ronald. And I'm like, you know what? They were such a big part of my life. They were a huge part of her life. And there's so many good things to remember, right? And while our loved ones may die in horrible death under horrible circumstances, they probably lived a pretty good life. And
Yeah.
that's what we want to remember.
To focus that.
Yes.
So there's one, difficult question I want to ask you, because as a lot of the listeners know, I was a prosecutor in the Army. I prosecuted mostly a lot of homicides in my later time, and I worked with families all the time. I mean, when you prosecute these crimes, you almost become part of the family. And I've talked about forgiveness in different parts, but one thing that they always mention, you talk about in your book, is this idea of God's plan. How can you say that it was God's plan for my daughter or someone to be murdered, or for your husband to have this, to cut down really in the prime of his life. What do you
Yes.
what do you tell someone who struggles with that?
So I think, Matthew, for me, what I believe is that God doesn't make us sick. God doesn't do these things, but he allows us to be tested. And I think about the story of Job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about how God said, you can do anything to him, but kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And the devil didn't he? He took away his family, his kids, his wealth, and even his friends were like, come on, Job, give it up. This God of yours. Seriously, look at it. Look at where you are. You're sitting in a pile of dirt with sores all over you.
Mm-hmm.
And Job would not, he would not turn against. He didn't know why. He didn't know why all this was happening to him, but he would not turn his back on God. And so I will tell you, I struggled, because here's what I thought, Matthew. I
Mm-hmm.
thought if anybody was going to be healed of ALS, if the miracle of the healing, it was going to happen. But
Yeah.
it was going to happen to John, because not because of me or my faith, but just because God can heal anyone of anything at any time. I do believe that. But he does. What I do have to say, and what I do believe, is that look what Jesus went through on our behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what he went through. Who are we to think that we're going to get through this life unscathed?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that may not be what people want to hear. We don't have all the answers to the questions. We may never have them on this side.
Mm-hmm.
And I always am like, oh yeah, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask about this. Well, I think by the time I get there, I'm going to be so overwhelmed by everything else. I'm not going to.
That's not going to be the worry. That's not going to be the worry.
Exactly. So those are the things that I like I said, I think he allows us to be tested, because that is where our faith, that's where we really have to go in and say, okay, I'm all in. I'm all in, Jesus. I am all in with you. And I know, and I want to remind people too, that Holy Spirit is gifted to us. That is our supernatural superpower that we have, Matthew. It lives and resides in us as believers. We were gifted with that. Stir it up, so that when you don't know how to handle things, just say, be stirred up in me. Handle this for me, because I can't do it right now. I don't know what to do.
And Rachel, we're going to have to end it pretty soon here, but our time went really quick. But your book, The Widow Chose Red, what I'll do, I'll ask you about that when we're on the break, because we're about to take a hard break. But this is available on Amazon. I have a sticker here. It says #1 Amazon bestseller. I did check it out on Amazon. 5-star reviews almost all around. I think there's only one 4-star. There's no 1-star reviews. All 5-star reviews there on Amazon. So it's available there. I just checked it. I think it's $15 or something right there on Amazon. You can also get the, $19 for the paperback, $3 for the Kindle. You also have a hardcover, it looks like.
I do have a hardcover, and the audio is on Spotify.
Oh, Spotify as well. All right, we have to take a real hard break. Rachel, I want to talk to you during the break, but we're going to take this hard break right here. All right, sorry about that. Sorry about that, Rachel. We have to take a break right at 55, or it'll it's one of
Or
those
you'll
things.
be off the air. Okay,
Yeah,
Matthew,
exactly.
no problem. No
Uh,
problem.
but
I'm so impressed with the questions you're asking me. They're terrific.
no, thank you. I did want to just basically my curiosity again. We're still on the live stream. We're not on the FM, but we're still live
Sure.
streaming. So how is J3 and Jake doing now? I know they're both in their 20s at this point, right?
They are, and
Yeah.
that's the second book. The second
Mhm.
book is going to be The Boys, The Battle in the Bible. 28, John J3 is 28. He's got two little kids, and lives about an hour away from me. Jake is working for a sports marketing agency in Chicago,
Wow.
and so they are. They've had some more struggles, but
Yeah.
that's what I'll talk about in the second book, and then the third one is going to talk about how I met Kevin,
Yeah.
God, the guy, and the girls. Yeah.
And Kevin, you guys. So I know you married to Kevin now. When did you guys get married?
We got married 2 years ago at the Sea of Galilee. We took all the kids to
Oh, wow.
Israel, and we're actually married by the pastor that baptized both the boys and that did John's celebration of life.
Oh, wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing. There's so many things, like I said, I didn't have the chance to cover. One thing I did want to mention, though, what I thought was really good in your book about is advocating for your loved one at the hospital, because I've worked with hospitals as an attorney, and seeing some of the things they do. Sometimes your best interest is not their best interest. I think so
Yes.
many people are scared to, say no. I think they're trying to get some blood, and you're like, no, you don't
Yeah.
need blood. We know
Yes.
what it's got. There's no questions here, right?
Yes.
That common sense that eventually comes to you. And I think that was such a great point in your book to tell people hey, it's okay to stand up to the hospital every once in a while, which I
Yes.
think is so important.
You were absolutely right, Matthew. And I wanted to tell you, because you
Yeah.
being the literary critic that you have been,
Yeah.
we were just awarded the Literary Titan Gold Book Award.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So
Um,
I just got that, like, I think it was just happened just this last week. So I wanted to let you know that, being that you come from that world.
Yeah, that is awesome. And you have a website as well.
I do.
What is your website?
The website is spiritedprosperity.com, and I'm just building a community of women who need support, a place to go. They can come and get information about where I'm going to be speaking, events that I'll be at, and if they want me to come and be a part of their book club, or if I can come to their women's conference, I'm always available to do that, or just join our online community. Happy
Yeah.
to be a part.
Absolutely. And will you be coming back to Jackson anytime soon, doing some book signings or anything like that?
You know what, Matthew? I hope so.
Yeah.
As I said, I have my uncle who was just recently
Yeah.
diagnosed. He's being treated by the same doctor that treats Steve Gleason
Yeah.
in New Orleans. And so my guess is that I'll be back a few more times, and I will definitely keep you posted.
Awesome. All right. Well, Rachel, thank you again for joining us. We're going to hit the break. We're almost out of the FM, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us again. I really enjoyed this book. Here's the cover of it again for everybody. The Widow Chose Red, question mark, which again, I think is it's a great book. It's an entertaining read, and especially the reflection and stuff on there. So again, Rachel, thank you for joining us, and we'll be talking to you soon for your other two books.
Oh, Matthew, Godspeed to you and your audience.
Thank you.